Please do not start an Airbnb arbitrage business or sign any lease without watching this video. Today I'm going to share you the 7 things you need to think about before starting. This video is for you if you are new to Airbnb and thinking about getting to Airbnb arbitrage, or maybe you're someone who already has some leases, some properties, and you're thinking about expanding and doing more. I will also share what I would do if I was trying to grow a sustainable business today. So first of all, what is Airbnb arbitrage? Well, simply, it is when you rent a property from a landlord and then sublet it on Airbnb. So instead of having to buy a property or instead of managing it for somebody who owns it, you're simply renting it as you might rent the house or apartment that you live in. This is something that I have done and I will continue to do. However, there have been some deals that I regret doing, and had I thought about the things that I'm going to share with you today, I wouldn't have done them. Why is Airbnb arbitrage popular? Well, first of all, a lot of online gurus position it as a get rich quick. The benefit to arbitrage is that you can scale quickly, especially through the apartment model. Get access to $100,000, $200,000 of business credit. You can get maybe 15 apartment leases and furnish them on a credit card. So if these apartments are making $40,000 a year and you have 15 of them, you have a $600,000 revenue business. Wild. So a lot of people post a lot online about revenue, but they don't talk about expenses. That brings me to the first thing you need to think about is, what are your expenses? What are they today? And what are they going to be in the future? Your biggest expense is going to be your rent. People ask, how will I get the landlord to let me do this? Well, it's simple. You are literally bribing them with rent. That said, leases often have a certain duration. Afterwards, the landlord can increase your rent unless there is a cap in the increase. So I recommend negotiating these caps into your lease. Landlords can also be tricky and charge for things like parking. Maybe it's free year 1, but they charge you on the renewal. Maybe utilities were free on the lease, but not the renewal, and utilities add up. So I recommend running a B&B Calc arbitrage analysis and seeing all the line items under operating expenses to understand the main ones. But make sure there's nothing hidden. Your second biggest one is going to be cleaning. Different operators have different cleaning costs because of their scale. If you have full-time cleaners, you might get your cost down per clean, but if you don't have enough work for them, then it'll often cost you more as you are paying per clean. So when you're paying per clean, you can't be too cheap, or your cleaners are going to do a bad job and the reviews on your property are going to be pretty bad. So you need to understand the unit economics of your cleaning ahead of time. This game has 2 main clients and partners you need to think about. You have your guests who are staying at the property, and you also have your landlord. That brings me to our second common mistake: not vetting or getting screwed by your landlord. Your landlord owns the property. You do not own it. Properties will have issues. There will be occasional leaks, pest issues, the air conditioning will go out. Good landlord partner will help get people out there promptly and take care of the problem. Good landlords want you to be successful, so you keep resigning your lease. Issues lead to bad reviews and guests wanting refunds. For example, it might be extremely hot in the summer. The HVAC is 10 years old and it goes out. You find a vendor who can replace the HVAC that day with what they have in stock. You have a big booking coming up that weekend and you need the problem fixed. However, the landlord has a preferred vendor who they've been working with for 20 years and they can get a discount on a new unit, but it's going to be 2 weeks. They don't care about your booking. They want to save money, so they schedule it out. You try to get them to pay for the guests who canceled upon arrival, leave you a 1-star review. But that isn't something that's guaranteed in the lease. They still expect you to pay rent on time. You get so frustrated that you consider buying a new HVAC yourself. Do not do that because it is not your property. Don't make capital improvements. And this is my next point. I see many who see a property and think if they do some improvements, it will do better. Maybe they repaint the house or apartment. Maybe they do some landscaping improvements. Maybe they add a hot tub. I understand that you are improving your rental potential, but you are also adding value to the property. Any capital improvements, which is pretty much anything outside of furniture, should be done by the landlord. Maybe paint some accent walls, but outside of that, leave it to the landlord. I've had this arbitrage property in my portfolio for almost 3 years. Before I signed the lease, I asked the landlord to add this fenced-in area in the backyard. I knew that a lot of people were traveling to this city with dogs, and I wanted an area where people could just go out the back door, let their dog off on a leash and not have to worry about. So for that house, my landlord added the fenced in backyard, as I knew that that would make the house pet friendly and give me a chance to rise above my competition. So that brings me to my next point. You need to not only think about today's competition, but future competition. We recently ended our lease at 3 apartments. I intended to rent these apartments for years. However, what I didn't anticipate was someone was going to rent an entire building down the road from the same landlords. These listings were better than ours, and because that complex had a dog park, whereas ours did not, even though our units were designed better and had better reviews, we both had to drop our rates to compete with one another. While we actually had decent scale in the city, they now had 3 times as many listings and hired their cleaners full time. They were able to cut their marginal cleaning costs, so there was nothing we could do to outcompete them. And unfortunately, the supply had increased tremendously in this market. Right now, there are a lot of multifamily buildings coming online. Landlords need partners like you who can fill their vacancy. You can maybe get 1, 2, 3 months of rent upfront for free. However, you are not special. Someone can come next door and get the same thing. So where our 3 apartments were in Durham, North Carolina, you could literally look off our deck and see so many multifamily buildings getting built everywhere. So now I actually see people posting in the local Airbnb host Facebook group that they are not getting the bookings while supply of these units has exploded. Meanwhile, demand has not followed. So that brings me to the next point, demand. Market dynamics in 2021, 2022 for a lot of places was increasing demand with supplies that were low following COVID. In 2023 and 2024, a lot of new inventory came online and demand went up, but not by as much. A lot of people who may have stayed at a 1-bedroom with its own kitchen during COVID were now back at hotels. This was not a recession, but more normalization. However, recessions are a real thing. My colleagues and friends who have been in the game for almost a decade lost a lot of their Airbnb arbitrage colleagues during COVID. COVID was a black swan event, but eventually there will be a recession and rent will still be due every month. Even before COVID, there were operators going out of business. A lot of these operators took on too much debt, which will bring me to my next point. Don't get into a debt spiral. I know it is enticing. You can get 6 figures of business credit on a 0% APR credit card to scale your portfolio. When I underwrite my arbitrage deals, I want to pay back my credit card in 6 months. So all in all, I want my cash plus credit paid back within 8 months. And I'm not going to lie, I do this and I still do it. I even applied for a new credit card on Monday. This one is going to be 6 months of 0% APR. What I see with other people is that they can't stop. I personally make sure I pay off my cards in their entirety before getting a new one and recycling the process. What others do is they want to keep scaling, so they keep taking on more and more debt. Sometimes they transfer their debt from one card to another, hoping to extend the inevitable. One thing goes wrong, and all of a sudden, a multi-6-figure credit card bill is due with interest. And that 0% introductory APR period is now over, and the credit card is due with 20% interest, and that is on top of your rent. So think about that. You might owe tens of thousands of dollars of rent and thousands of dollars of interest. You are now within a debt spiral and you can't really get out. And I'm sorry, unlike the US government, you can't just print more money. And now to add a double whammy, you may owe taxes, which you have not been accounting for. While there are tax planning strategies like Section 179 for furniture and rent, cleaning, and all these different write-offs, but I've just seen that a lot of people do not really do tax planning, and then they get hit when the tax deadline comes around. Now let's tell you about some things you can do proactively. You should think about these things, and one of those is the end game. Are you going to rent the property for 5 years, take your winnings, and get out? At a certain point, your furniture will start to wear, and you might need to invest more money into the property. Are you going to sell your business? Sorry, but there hasn't been real arbitrage M&A for years. There is actually an Airbnb business model that does legitimately allow your company to get acquired. I'm going to talk about that one later. But if you're going to do arbitrage, you need to look for supply constraints. Regulations are actually good. Philadelphia is an example of this, as it is a city that's hard to get into, as they have specific zoning rules and supply doesn't blow up like places in Texas such as Houston that have zero regulation. You can also look for types of properties that it's harder to build. Like for example, a 6-bedroom house with a fenced-in backyard in cities are more challenging to scale than small apartments. I've been running the 6-bedroom house I shared with you earlier for years. Minus some cockroach issues that are now resolved, knock on wood. I don't find it likely that a deluge of competitive supply will hit the market. Make sure you have a unique offering. Don't fall for 30 apartments in a Class C building. Make sure you have an out and a strong lease agreement and lease addendum. An out can be 2 months notice. Lease agreements can say rent will go up a certain amount per year and also have specific parking, utilities, and other guidelines. Make sure you have a strong lease addendum, that you really went through your lease, vet your landlord, and make sure your properties are good in condition. So not only should you vet the property and make sure it's in good shape, but also vet the landlord. Do they look like a reputable person? Do they have referrals? I mean, this is a two-sided street. You're not just interviewing and applying for them. They should feel like they are interviewing to you as well as good partners. Also, do not sign a lease without actually going to visit the property. I've seen people do this. It almost never goes well. It's the easiest way for you to get hoodwinked by a landlord. So make sure to get in there, get your pen and paper out, walk around, take photos, make sure that the property is in good condition. Don't overlever. Be smart and don't bite off more than you can chew. Understand variables like payback period and what that means, as well as your expenses. So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna show you how to run a simple arbitrage analysis with B&B Calc. I'm gonna show you, here's an arbitrage analysis on a property, on a 6-bedroom property I have. It's been doing, I'm gonna show you guys full transparency. I'm gonna go into my metrics, again, filter out any information that's not pertinent. So I'm gonna filter by property. I'm gonna do downstairs. It's actually a duplex, but I have it last 1 year. So as you can see here, the property's made $86,000 in the last year, which was, I think, a little bit over actually my initial estimates. I can plug in the exact average daily rate, which is 191. My ADR, so 86,000. It's a couple listings technically. So 6-bedroom house, but I split it into 2 listings, 67% occupancy about here. So which means it's about a $356 average daily rate. But what I can do is I can understand, so that's my revenue, and also I can understand my expenses. So with B&B Calc, you can plug in your expenses. For this property, my electric bill is more. My garbage is actually covered by the city and landlord. It doesn't have any gas. So here I'm making, a couple $1,000s a month of profit. And actually, the first year I did it, I believe I almost hit 100,000. So now it is less profit than it used to be. And that's common. It's been over, 3 years. I haven't refreshed the property, but still profiting, made back my initial cash investment, which was about $15,000 a while ago. So here, you can actually look at your initial cash investment. So I just paid for furniture. Again, the landlord was the one who did the backyard fenced-in conversion, but here is my initial furniture investment. And then something you want to think about is, your security deposit. I negotiated, no security deposit with this particular landlord, but I negotiated no security deposit. As his landlord, I have other properties with, and I think I paid, and I don't think I actually paid an application fee, and I got the first month's free. So, if I were to invest this today, and assuming I make the same cash flow, my payback period would be 220 days, or just over 7 months. So if I'm looking at my investment value over time, here's my profit, but you obviously want to keep in mind you spent $15,000 at the beginning. So 5 years, this property has potential to generate, 6 figures in profit, which is the cool part about arbitrage. However, to be honest, I don't anticipate renting this property for 10 years, and I don't think it's really realistic for someone to think that they're going to rent a property forever. So I recommend really underwriting it like you're gonna rent it for maybe 3 or 5 years. With B&B Calc, you can actually run the numbers and look at the different comps. Ironically, my property actually shows up as a comp. This particular property, this is like the worst reviews I have for any property, and it's because I had pest issues and got a 1-star reviews. We got it fixed, so now we get 5 stars, but that's something to keep in mind, that an issue can come, you get 1-star reviews all of a sudden, and now your revenue's gone down, but rent is still owed every month. Our landlord responded to the pest issue. However, it just took like a couple months for the issue to get resolved. So in the meantime, we were getting bad reviews and it really hurt our revenue outlook. The reason why, frankly, just while we're here, that property is only showing 68, even though we just looked before into my property management software and it's doing more, is because this is only the 6-bedroom listing. I also have 2 other listings that compose. The 6-bedroom one is the one that mainly gets booked. However, I do have a 4-bedroom and a 2-bedroom listing, which get booked less often, however, help make up, that $86,000 in revenue that's right here. If you like transparency, subscribe to my page and like this video. It really goes a long way. So guys, obviously here, the revenue is a big part of us getting this $2,000 a month or $24,000 a year of cash flow. Another big variable here is our rent, which is up here. So like, let's say our lease ends and our landlord, which he actually did try to do, he tried to raise it to like $3,700 a couple of weeks ago. And I pretty much said, hey, just gonna let you guys know that if that's what the rent is, it's getting to the point where I'm not hitting the profit criteria that I have. What I asked them to do was I said, please provide a market rent assessment. And I was actually able to see through B&B Calc. We can actually go and we can see some of these long-term rents. What I did was I actually looked and I said, can you please, I didn't see any nearby rentals that had rent the amount they wanted to raise my rent. So I asked them to find some. I said, can you find me some rental comps that justify this $3,700 a month rent? And honestly, I don't think they could. So we actually kept our rent what it was. So don't just pay any rent. Don't think because the landlord's allowing you to rent their apartment that you're just gonna pay anything. You want to pay market rent. So I'm gonna be very clear. You don't pay more in rent than you need to. Pay the market rent. That's something I really believe. So as you can see here again, that $2,000 a month in profit, if my rent goes up to like, let's say $3,750, that's gonna bring my profit under $2,000 a month and make it, less than $20,000 a year. So your rent's super important. The amount you pay in rent adds up. So don't just pay any rent, pay competitive market rent. You want an alternative to renting. You want an Airbnb business that actually requires zero risk and still has mergers and acquisitions, meaning that eventually you can sell your business after you've grown it. For that, I recommend, co-hosting, which is you manage properties for homeowners, take care of guest communication and marketing. Sometimes people refer to it as property management. However, I think there's so many bonuses to this business model because there's zero risk up front. You don't have to worry about your credit card. You don't have to worry about the landlord. You obviously want the properties to be in good shape, but ultimately, if things go awry, you don't lose any money. So no upfront expenses are great. There's actually exit options. People do actually buy co-host businesses. The multiples are not as high as they were in 2021, but they actually do still sell for EBITDA multiples or at a multiple of contract value. We don't have to get into all that minutia today, but if you do want some information on that, comment below. Your wish is my command. Thank you guys for watching today. Hope you found it helpful. Please like, subscribe, and comment what else you'd like from me. I'm gonna be posting a lot more on how to succeed with short-term rentals in 2025 and into the future. So make sure to subscribe, and until next time.